Right? Okay, I guess we can start already the discussion. Okay, good afternoon. Welcome to this discussion about career crossroads of academia and industry, between choosing academia and industry. If it's not a secret that at a certain part of life during your studies in your bachelor's, master's, you come across a certain point where you have to choose between two doors. One leads to the academia, the other one university, the other one leads to industry. And basically, one or the other point has its pros and cons. But sadly, at some point, people are covered with so-called stereotype bubbles or the social pop culture. And basically, they think that going into the industry sector, it's more secured. Remaining into academia, it's more adventurous. Which is better, which is worse? And it's not a secret that even after 20, 25 years or even more, people tend to come back, even succeeding in one specific area. In this discussion, we will be talking about those certain cases with people who have experience in those scenarios. We will ask questions: which road, which pathway is better, which guarantees you more of a successful career path. And and before introducing these wonderful participants, I would like to give a very few words about them. So starting with Professor Ursula Keller. I believe that you had a chance to interact with her during today's lecture. And she's Ursula comes from the Switzerland, from the ETH Zurich Hochschule in Zurich. I know that it's only 2% information about your biography, and we could see it here, but I will let you speak about it. Oh, wow. I think it's just one slide out of two.
So you see a lot, so...
Yeah. No, I will lead up with other contestants. Then talking about Dr. Simona Liukaitytė-Suszczynska from Light Conversions. She is representative today from the private sector. Although she comes from the industry, she has also a PhD degree, and she studied at Aix Marseille University. Hello. Dr. Lina Grinevičiūtė from the National Center of Physical Sciences and Technology. She's the head of the Optical Coating Laboratory, and in my knowledge, back in 2021, she received an award from the President of Lithuania for the best dissertation in natural, technological, medical, and health and agricultural sciences. Hello. And last but not least, Eulalia Puig Vilardell, representative of the institutional Erasmus Mundus joint master's degree Europhotonics program. Her original university is Aix Marseille University, and currently she is at her last studies in Laser Research Center at Vilnius University. Hello. And your moderator for today's discussion will be I. My name is Arnola Solovjovas, currently enrolled as a PhD student in Vilnius University. So, although we are all formally dressed, but I would like to welcome you and invite you not to hesitate and ask any question that you would like from the audience to make it as informal as it possible. We have a cube, which is actually a microphone. You are allowed to throw it, but not break it. And yes, and I think that now I could give the floor to our participants. So, Ursula. Oh, and we have two microphones, so we'll have to share.
Okay, good. Okay, I make it short. So I just got into science because I was very one-sided gifted. I was good in math and not good in languages. And then I wanted to understand nature and technology. And so I picked physics because that was logical and met, and I could use my math. And then I just kept going through the university system, and I really liked my time as a student. And then it became clear that after the master, that I wanted to do a PhD, but I wanted to do it abroad. So I got a Fulbright fellowship, and then I went to the US, and then I was part of the US system. When I applied to the US, I said I want to go into the industry. And I chose applied physics at Stanford. So after I was done with Stanford, I went to industry. I went to AT&T Bell Labs, but the research was like at a university, so the door was still open. But I also got my own independent lab and my own independent research directly after the PhD. And the guidelines was to do something different than anybody else. And at the beginning, I was, I chose that job, even though I had a job also at IBM where I would have had clear guidance what I was supposed to do. But I chose the one which was totally scary. And I think you always have to do a job which is a little bit scary. And so I went there, and then when I arrived, I kind of was thinking, oh my God, what am I gonna do? And I was all stressed out. And then, the Thai sapphire laser happened. And I was at the right time, at the right place, and things evolved. And so I built up my lab for 4 years, did my first things. And then I got phone calls, I got recruited to academia. Even so, initially I did not plan to go to academia. And then once people approached me and I interviewed, I was thinking, oh, why not try? And then I had the benefit that I was also recruited back to Switzerland because they had a woman demo at 1991. So I actually was a quota woman in a certain extent because they desperately looked for some women. They remembered me, graduating top of the class, and then, was still around. And so they basically offered me the job. And I knew Switzerland, and I knew it was a tough place to go as a woman. And so I negotiated and said, I only come for a tenured professor position. And then and I was really not willing to go because I was also okay doing industry job. And then I went, and my husband came along as a trailing husband, starting a company. And, I've been in this job ever since, but I could have also done something else. So I know how it happens there are definitely pros and cons. And I will have some comments along those ways, how I see it, what is the advantage of an academic, what is an advantage of actually starting a company versus a large company. So yeah, I can definitely give some advice. I also have 2 boys, which are now 25 and 27, and I actually give them pretty much the advice that I try to give you now. So,
thank you. Simona?
So it's interesting to see what you're going to show about me.
Will we be able to show slides? A bit.
Oh, that's not me, I guess.
A bit, yeah.
That's better. Okay, so I have a PhD, I have a bachelor, and I have 2 masters in 2 different universities in 2 different countries. So actually, I have spent 7 years in the academia, then 8 years in the industry. And I think my background is interesting because I was changing a lot of the things from industry to academia. I was also changing the countries. I have worked and studied in Lithuania, France, and Germany. As well, I have changed the industries. I was working in a space field. Now I'm working in a lasers field in Lithuania. But what I always liked is hands-on in the lab, on the instrument, and solving someone else's problems, actually. So solving the problems, even in academia, I was working on the problems that came from the industry. So actually, for me, this is like a nice point and a good idea that even if you work in academia, that does not mean that you have to do only fundamental things. If you really like to improve, for example, I don't know, Lithuania economy and create something new, so you can take the problem from light conversion, solve it in the lab, and then give it to us. So we are all gonna be richer and happier. So that's one of my points, and if you have any questions now or after, for example, if you want to ask me anything, you can contact me on LinkedIn, and I will be very glad to answer you. Thank you.
Thank you. Lina?
Hello, everyone. First of all, thank you for inviting me here. And yeah, I'm from Center for Physical Sciences and Technology and from Optical Coatings Laboratory Group. So more or less, I'm a scientist now. But as I understand now, we should make a short introduction how I become scientist. So I never dreamed of becoming scientist. Actually, during my master studies, I was already decided to go to industry and to find some optical coatings laboratory, or not laboratory, but the company who is doing R&D research or something like that. And I went to work to Optida, now it's Altechna. But somehow my supervisor was also from the laboratory. And yeah, my work was more or less between company and the research laboratory. And after a few months, I even didn't understand how I switched to science side. And yeah, after a master, I decided to go for PhD studies, and somehow I stayed in science. Yeah, so those decisions who are made during a bachelor or master's doesn't mean that you will stay there for a long time. Yeah, so sometimes some decisions are on the way.
Thank you. Eulalia?
Okay. In my case, I'm in this point of, most of you might be, that you have to actually decide where you want to continue. And as you said, like, I didn't plan actually to go for PhD, but a bit advanced is that I'm gonna finally go through. So maybe that will give already some clue of my point of view in this. But also it's not something that I know for sure I will stay in academia. Like, of course, like, life can change a lot, and I'm open to those changes. I'm also not sure. I was also not sure in which field I wanted to work. So during like I don't have that long career as the other people here, but the internships I was able to make and everything, I was also testing different fields. So yeah, I don't have much else to add to this. So I guess we can.
Okay, so we can move on forward a bit. Let's get back to the beginning where I stated that each person at a certain time in his life, her life, has the choice between choosing between academia or industry. Based on your current situation, what was the main motive or main motives that led you to choosing that concrete door, that concrete pathway? Who'd like to start?
Okay.
Yeah.
In my case, I think I realized for now, continuing academia, pursuing a PhD is what I need to grow in this like scientific research or as a researcher, because I think is the environment that will be more favorable for my growth in this aspect, which doesn't mean that after that I will stay in academia, but I think right now is what I need to continue.
For me, probably the first decision was at school. Then I was in the last year of my school. Actually, I didn't know what I want to do. And I just decided to go for applied physics studies just to prolong this decision, because I really didn't know to which direction, to which engineering side goes. So yeah, I chose to applied physics studies for bachelor in Vilnius University of Technology, first of all. And I think the first hint for me that I really like photonics was when I started to do my bachelor thesis and I was working with holograms. Somehow I really like this way how to make experiments, how to know everything, and how to go to some problems and you have to solve them. And of course it's not easy to solve physics problems, but at the end somehow it's like happens that you do something and you have like article you're presenting in conferences. Yeah, so this part really was exciting for me. Then I decided to prolong my studies in applied physics and master. Yeah, and after that I decided to go to photonic industry. But yeah, somehow when I was doing master also thesis and all scientific research projects in master, during master, somehow I really like this scientific challenges and solving them. So this was the main reason why I go to PhD studies.
Great.
Well, I think for me, everything has started, of course, when I started my studies in the Faculty of Physics, but the main decision that completely changed my life was during my third year of my bachelor to go to a laser research center and to use my free time, because as a student we actually have a lot, to learn something in the lab. And I always knew that I will go to the industry sooner or later. I was always thinking, yeah, a few months more, this task I finish and then I go to the company. But because I had amazing supervisors, I was learning a lot. Really, this experience was like for free, and I could ask all the questions and so on. So I have stayed until PhD because of this reason, and all the things I was doing in the lab was really like market driven. But I went to the industry at the end because I knew that what I really like and the reason I want to wake up in the morning and go to work is to solve real life problems, like something that brings value today to the people, that it's really my passion. So this is, it was the case, and actually it's still the case, and I'm really happy that I did this decision. So yeah, I think I will stay in industry now, but I really enjoy that there are people who helps for us in the industry and do some great coatings.
So in my case, I'm now at the end of my whole career, turning 65 now this year. And I kept telling to everybody, the best thing that can happen to you is to have a job where you feel like you're not working for anybody, but actually you're constantly, curiosity-driven, and you're in charge of determining what you want to do and where you want to do. I mean, this is like a dream job. And this you can get in several environments. I kind of slided into the academic career, even so initially I didn't see me there because I also never saw a woman professor until I was going to the US. So it never occurred to me that I can actually become a professor. And so I think, I decided to go to the PhD because I wanted to do interesting work. I mean, I realized, I need to understand things better. And it was for me a path to go abroad. So I could win a fellowship, a Fulbright fellowship, and that was for me a way of living abroad without, having any money, because once you're accepted at a university, they then pay for your, so I had a research assistantship, and then I could learn more. And then every place you go, you should go to the best possible place, because then you interact with a lot of really great people. And you don't know what comes next, because you just go next. And, if you want to be a better skier, you ski with better skiers, right? So, I mean, for going to Stanford, that was incredible. You met so many great people, and they just open up more opportunities, things I never was planning. And after I did 3.5 years of that, I knew that, for example, Bell Labs or IBM was the next step. I got a job at both places, and I took the one which was actually slightly more scary. I even separated from my husband because I knew that if I would give up my dream job, I ultimately would make him responsible for anything that goes wrong afterwards. So we went into a bi-coastal marriage. We're still married today, by the way. A lot of people predicted we will get divorced, but actually our relationship got stronger because we were sitting on the phone every day and talked a lot, which probably happened more. And every time we saw each other for 3.5, we had a romantic weekend. I can tell you, once we moved together, we didn't have every month a romantic weekend. So we then also had kids, which of course doesn't help. But anyway, I mean, all in all, I actually think you don't need to see it as so crucial either or. It is every step you go, you look at what is possible next. I keep telling my PhD student the most important decision at the end of your PhD is what you want to do next, okay? And sometimes, in this time period, something totally new pops up that you haven't even thought about. And also, when you go into going academia, you need to like to work in research where a lot of time your experiment doesn't work and you still like it. Right? In this exploratory mode. If you don't like it, some people are perfect in R&D. They have a roadmap and they like to really work through all the possible problems to work through this roadmap to have a very specific goal. Whereas in research, you don't have necessarily a very specific, it's more an explorer, you know, and you need to like not knowing if this question is right or not right, you know. And if you hate that, maybe research is not your right thing, but it doesn't mean it's better or worse. You just need to find out what you like to then choose the next step. I actually think I had a dream job, but I married also somebody who went into the industrial path, and he never, ever, ever wanted to do an academic teaching. Oh my gosh, you know. So I actually think this is what you need to be honest to yourself what you enjoy. And as long as you enjoy your work, you're willing to put in the extra hours. And then I think not being secure about an academic career, nothing is secure. You know, you just go, and if it doesn't work anymore, you take another turn, right? Because nowadays, when you go into academia, you learn project management, you learn proposal writing, you need to learn leading people. All the stuff is also required in industry. So as long as industry is not so fixed that they need to have the people below 30, I think they should look also just the quality of the person so that people can actually explore different paths and see if they like it. And if they don't like it, they change. That's my recommendation to you. And as long as it works, you might be surprised, right? Because there's a lot of people tell you how smart they were when they did the research, but there is luck involved, a big part of luck. You need to be also at the right time, at the right place, with your background, where a field is suddenly exploding. And I was lucky, right? And then you need to be smart enough to realize when you're lucky. That's the only difference, right?
Thank you very much for your answers.
I would like to ask about that point in life where you have to choose something, for example, to go abroad for a PhD or to go work abroad, right? And you have whole your life at home, right? Okay, the cube is working. You have your whole life at home. How do you not feel scared to leave everything behind for whatever time, may it be 2 or 3 years, or perhaps you never come back home? How do you deal with it? I guess this applies for most of the participants here because they've been abroad for a long time away from home.
I mean, I can only say is you need to move. It's die Lehr- und Wanderjahre. You know, when you look at all the books and so on in the old days only guys did it, you know, the learning and walking years. You know, life is way too short to be boring, right? So you go and explore and go and see the world. And I can tell you, I try to help my students to also get abroad. I told my kids, get the hell out of Switzerland, you know, and they're both going, luckily. And so, yes, you need to move. And a PhD is a good time to move, actually.
Well, for me, actually, I also have moved a lot to France, to Germany, then back to Lithuania again. And I had always the tolerance to fear. Like, I was afraid of doing things. Even when I was going to Laser Research Center, I was afraid. I was thinking, oh my God, I don't know anything. My notes are not 10 always and so on. But you just go and you do it, even if you are afraid of, because nothing is going to happen to you actually at the end. The only thing that will happen is that you will learn and you will solve this problem. And after you do it once, there is no borders. Like when I moved to France, I moved literally alone with the luggage. I didn't have anything, not a lot of money really, but I did it once, and after I understood that I can live anywhere. And actually, it's one of the reasons I live in Lithuania now, is that I needed to choose, like, where is the country where I want to live? Because I was thinking, okay, I moved to France, I was in Marseille, then I moved to Toulouse, I was working in French Space Agency, then I moved to Germany, and actually they gave me 2 weeks between I sent my CV and they sent me proposition for a job, and they They gave me 2 weeks in total, but they sent me on Friday the offer with the salary, and they said, can you please tell me on Monday if you come? And I knew nothing about Germany. I didn't know the social system, nothing really. Munich, I was once for 1 day. And I said, okay, I go, because actually you just go and you do it. And then I was thinking always about the good points. Okay, so Munich is a nice place, it's near the mountains. I will enjoy the mountains, it's a good company. And then all the problems you just solve. There's no other way. You're not gonna sit and cry, you're just gonna do it. So that's it. Yeah, you can cry a little if you want, but then you just stand up and move on. That's it.
Probably I'm with the least experience here abroad, but yeah, when I was in bachelor, I tried Erasmus studies for half a year in Slovenia, in Ljubljana University. And I think for me it was, that half a year, it was I get the understanding that I don't want to do very long period outside of Lithuania, and in Lithuania is not so bad here. Yeah, so of course I am 100% agree that you have to travel, you have to go into internships. Yeah, but I think in Lithuania the level of education is almost the same like in all Europe or in US, and you can reach. If you want, you can reach the same goals here in Lithuania with short period internships also. So yeah, there's probably pros and cons also to go for a few years out of Lithuania. But it's not that you must do that if you want to be competitive in science.
In my case, I always wanted to go abroad for some time, and actually during my bachelor's I got offered to do an internship in China, in Shanghai, but there was COVID, so China blocked, no option to go there, and I kept that desire of going abroad, and then I found out this option of the Europhotonics program, which is it was really great. But for me it was easy to move abroad because everything was organized, someone was taking care of us and everything. So that was good. And I just wanted to live the experience, to live abroad for a while. And my next step was always to go back home. Even for the master's, University of Barcelona is one of the universities of the program. So my idea was, okay, I'm gonna do 1 year abroad and then I will go back home. Then plans changed. I ended up here in Vilnius, which I'm really grateful for, because otherwise I don't think I would have ended up here. I wouldn't have discovered, really, and I love it. And now, I thought to come here just for 1 semester. I'm doing the 2nd semester already, and I'm planning to do PhD also. So, yeah, I always was planning to make it a short time, and I think your country is always your safe place, usually. But then you also realize when you move from one place to another that you can also end up living anywhere and you will manage, and maybe you will even like it more. So I'm not that sure now that my next step will be going back home. But yeah, I think it's a great experience, but it can also be you can be also afraid. Also, in my case, I did this, and I don't have kids, or I don't have I don't need to be there because of other issues. So that's also easier, maybe.
Thank you very much for your answers. Based on your statements, I just remembered quite a famous quote. Although science is local, but science is international. Mm-hmm. And just moving back to, if we don't have any questions from the audience, I'm moving back to another question regarding the choices. You're at a very young age. You don't have no experience. You're afraid to choose. Should I go into industry, and after a few years of experience, I will come back into academia? But some of the colleagues tell me that after going into industry, you will never come back. But if you'll stay in the academia too long, the industry will not accept you. So the very simple question, how to choose when you're not sure?
That's a good question. And nowadays, it's very clear. If you're not sure and you want to consider an academic career, you're going to have to go first for the academic career. Because nowadays, it's very clear the path. The path is you finish your PhD, and hopefully you already were lucky that you had a couple of good publications during your PhD. You started to like this exploratory work. And then you go for a postdoc, 1 or 2, where you learn something else. So you expand your portfolio. And then you apply for assistant professor. And for this, you need to have, ideally, an ERC starting grant. So it actually tells you very soon if you can pull it off in the academic world, and you can try it, and then if it doesn't work, don't be upset, because going to industry or starting your own company is equally exciting. You know, it's just a different way. But if you want to go academic, nowadays you cannot go first to industry and then go back, because you're missing publications most of the time. You know, I went to Bell Labs and IBM. These were at that time really research labs, and we published like crazy, right? And we didn't even have to write proposals and had no teaching. So I could do only research. So it was an equal path, and both options were still open. But nowadays, you hardly have any industry anymore with this unrestricted R&D effort, because, you know, these were monopolies. AT&T was paid by telephone bills. And so they had this really free research where they say do something different than anybody else, but that's not going to happen in industry today anymore. You're on a project, publication is not the first priority. Industry is much more focused on product. And so at this point, you're going to have to make the decision. And to be aware of it, you have to get an ERC starting grant within 7 years after your PhD. So that's basically, if you get it, great, keep going, or you get a tenure track assistant professor, then keep going. If you don't get it after that time, you might want to choose something else.
Well, I would add that for me, the most important thing is to deep dive into yourself and think what drives you every day to go to work. Imagine what is the perfect day of your work day. And if you work in the industry, so your daily work has to be aligned, your daily task has to be aligned with the business yearly tasks. You always have to think about it. You do not have as much freedom. So what is really important is to think about yourself, gather the information also about the different possibilities. Like when I was working in France, I knew if I take this role in different companies, how much I would be paid in each company. I was always like gathering information. I was always speaking with people about how their work looks like, what are the opportunities. So I think it's really important like to really understand yourself. And another point is to get fact-based knowledge about the opportunities what you have in the companies, in different places, in the industry or in the academia, so that the decision you make would be not like automated one and not the one like you just keep going with the flow. Sometimes it works, but that it would be like self-conscious decision, that you know the pros and cons, you know how more or less it looks like in the industry, you know how it works in the academia, and then you do it regardless. Okay, that you know there are this kind of points. These points are bad in the industry. You have less freedom and so on, but you still do it. But you know it at the beginning. But another point is that you can always change. Like there is. Sometimes I speak with students like who do 6 months internship, and they say, "Oh, you know, now I did internship in a space, so I'm gonna stay in space." And it's completely crazy for me. You are the master. You can change. You can go to, like I was working in space. I was using literally lamps, halogens. Now I use lasers, and it's fine. I have a lot to learn. Yeah, that's true, but it's a good, and so you can always change. Like the decision you make is the decision of today with the knowledge that you have today about yourself and about the world around you. But it might change when you learn something new, so you can do something else. And yeah, it's not the most straight path. Like when you look at my CV, if you compare my CV with my colleagues from light conversion, it looks completely crazy. Like they don't understand what I was doing and why, but for me it was good. It was my decision. Other like like to climb the career ladders faster, so then you go to the industry since the beginning, since a bachelor degree, and then you learn fast. You can become, for example, from a laser technician, you go to the marketing and so on quite fast, like we have here in actually Greta is sitting there, like she did this. So if you want to have a great and fast career, you go to the industry when you're at the young age. So for my point is like, know about yourself, get the knowledge about yourself and the world around you. Speak with people, it's very important.
What I could add, yeah, I agree that you have to listen to yourself, and it doesn't matter if you're working in science or you're working in industry. The most important, you must like it. And yeah, if you have some minds that you're not sure where to go, so just try to go to industry, and okay, you can work there 3 or 6 months, and if you don't like it, you can quit. No one is holding you there. Yeah, so just don't be afraid and try everything what you want. But one thing, actually, I think it's important to understand that industry is not like everywhere the same. You can work in the same company in production line, and it will be quite maybe boring stuff, but you can work in R&D section, then you are more near the scientific research work or R&D work. So yeah, but again, if you go to industry or you are staying in science, first of all, you should listen to yourself what you want to do, and yeah, what you like to do.
Okay, no much more to add, but at least for me, what was helping me right now was, because I'm in this situation, I was not sure what I want in life, but you do have to think what you like and what you don't like. And if you're not sure where you want to be in like long term, think of what you like now. Like, I don't think you will regret something that at that point felt like the right decision. Like, we all make bad decisions, but if at that moment you are sure what you want to do next, I think like maybe if you don't have like that long vision, it's good enough to think what you want now. And what I got from my master's program, because they are telling us a lot about those things, if you're not sure really where to go, probably pursuing a PhD will leave you more doors open than going directly to industry, where then you will eventually have to do a PhD if you want to go back to academia.
Okay, thank you. I believe that during the point where you had to choose your career path, the hardest part is actually being honest to yourself, what you like or you don't like, and actually to agree on it. And Simona mentioned that while not being only honest to yourself, but you have to weigh those pros and cons of each career path. So we are talking about pros and cons of each career path, but we're not spilling them out. So could you just say directly to people, what are the pros and cons of each career path? So we just could, know them and write them down.
Now I'm going to do a plaidoyer for academic career. It's a dream job. Simple as that. I mean, what I liked about being in academia, once you get a tenured professor position, you're your own boss. You determine where you go. Of course, you still have to write proposals and get the proposals accepted. But then, I like the exploratory mode, and I wanted to do things that nobody ever did before, and I wanted to be the best, and as long as I followed this guideline, I also got the proposals funded, right? So, and then the nice thing about academia is also you constantly working with young people. They come through you for the PhD for 4 years, So you lose the good ones, which is sad, but you also lose the bad ones, which is good. So, I really, you constantly have an influx of new people. As soon as you hire somebody, you already have to worry about hiring the next one, and keep them all motivated. So you're a little bit of a cheerleader, because you can do more, I consider myself as a multiplier. I try to motivate people by goal setting, and as long as our goals are aligned, we're a team and we're running aligned to wherever. It's a win-win situation. So the students have the same goals. They want to get their papers accepted. They want to go to the conferences and get a PhD in 4 years, and I'm fully behind them to make this possible. So, this environment is great. I was my own boss, so that it was a great experience, and I got the money, and as long as I could do what I was interested on, I just kept going, right? At the same time, I watched my husband actually being an entrepreneur, picking up my invention, the CSEM mode locking, which I invented at the beginning of my career, which allowed me then to become professor. So I made the decision not to commercialize that, but he commercialized that. So I was cheating. I married the alternative career. And this is actually also something that dual career is an opportunity. It's an opportunity for both. So so my husband said from the beginning, I'm never going to marry a woman who is going to stay at home. Oh, ding, ding, ding. I'm not going to want to stay at home. So we got married, and he really, when I then had this opportunity to become a tenured professor, he said, oh, this is such a good job. I come with you to Switzerland as an American, not really speaking too much German. And then ultimately he started a company and commercialized the CSEM. And it was, at the end, a really good combination because, being a company plus academic, I consider pretty much a perfect situation because a company is also high risk. And in between, it takes longer than you think. In between, he couldn't pay himself a salary. And then I was there for the steady income at a university. But he was then responsible for getting the higher income at the end. But it just came all at once instead of, So you can live a totally different life if you are dual career because you also can go higher risk either way, right? So think also dual career in case you really cannot make up your mind.
Well, I would say what's good in industry is that if you really like solving the problems, developing new technologies that bring money to the company, to you, to the country, so the industry is the way to go. Because we are working on something that you can measure at the end. So if you like clear goals, measurable outcome, fast result of your work, so this is the industry, the way to go. And another thing that it's really good in the industry is that you can change your career. Like you can, I work in the R&D department, but sometimes I get propositions from other departments, like you could go somewhere else, you could go to marketing. And I know that sometimes when you work in the Faculty of Physics, at the beginning, everyone is like, oh, the coolest thing to do is to work in the lab, and those physicists who just speak and so on, it's not so nice. But actually, some people are really good in physics and in communicating. And this is a very important and quite a rare skill. So you could become someone very valuable, very fast in the company in this kind of way. So yeah, I think those are my points.
Okay, it's like a competition. Who will promote their job position better? Yeah, so I don't have too much what to add, but maybe one thing that science and like academia is not always so projected to universities. It's also, there's applied science, and we are doing a lot of research in collaboration with companies and doing, actually sometimes it's hard to understand, are you doing like applied research science or you are doing more industry research project, because it can be also combined in some ways. Yeah, so. But yeah, I would agree that if you're going to academia, you can feel like you are the boss for yourself, but boss also not from the good point of view, but also there is more responsibilities. You have always to have ideas what you, when you are writing project, you must have novel ideas, and to win those projects, to have like support to travel, to go to internships, to go to conferences. So if you want to be one of the top scientists, you have to actually work a lot in academia side too.
Okay. In this point, I really don't have anything to add because I don't have experienced any of them apart from, studies and those things. So maybe in some years I will be able to come back and give more answers of my opinion on that. But I guess for me, we can move forward.
Okay. Do you have any questions? Yes. Erika, could we please throw the cube? Thank you.
Hello, yeah. I have a specific question to Lithuanian system because you're a permanent staff researcher, or is that correct? Yes. Because I'm from Germany, and right now currently they're discussing a limit on how to limit the time a person can spend in the postdoc years to 2 years. And so in the stages after the PhD, the decision is much more definitive now that you either make it in the 2 years postdoc and then you're in academia, or if you don't make it in that short time. So there's not really that many permanent researcher positions higher than PhD and below professorships. So is that different here? Maybe, I hope not everyone knows this already, but is it a different system here that there's more possibilities between those two?
I can comment more or less from my institution, from Center for Physical Sciences and Technology. So from one side, I could say that there is some limited number of permanent positions, and you have to be lucky to be in that group. They have open positions for you just after you're finishing PhD, so immediately you are getting researcher position or senior researcher position. So the luck is involved here also. Mm-hmm. Yeah, but it's not so strict that, I don't know how it's in university, like Vilnius University. There are those docent positions or professor positions, but here in our institution, we don't have professorship. We have chief researchers. So after you finish PhD, and if you want to get permanent position, yeah, you have to have a few articles, do active research projects, and you have to be active in the field if you want to stay and go further with science. But if you do that, I think it's maybe easier than in Germany to get a permanent position. Yeah, but about postdocs, it's not like you are just postdoc for 2 years or something like that. Now in Lithuania, there are some programs, then you can write a postdoctoral fellowship like a project, and you can get for 2 years like a project to do postdoc, to get a postdoc position in some other institutions. Yeah, so there are some possibilities how you can get at least permanent position to prolong your scientific career. Mm-hmm.
I actually have to say, a permanent position did not trigger me at all, because I think, the key is, do you have an interesting position? That's the only question. And then you're good at something, and this something you become better and better with time, and that is your currency. Why people want to hire you, right? You have to learn to say, okay, this is my expertise and I'm really good at that. And, then who the heck with a permanent position? There are actually people in the Silicon Valley who are real expert in analog and electronics, and they're just working as consultant, getting paid much more because they're being pulled in because the next generation is all digital. They can't do any troubleshooting anymore in analog electronics. You're good in this one. He gets hired so often, he goes troubleshooting, gets paid so much more, and he doesn't care about a permanent position, but works more than most people in a permanent position. So I really think, who cares about permanent position? Because I always was thinking, if everything fails, I become a teacher. or I become a housewife. At my generation, that was actually what they expected a woman to do in Switzerland. So actually, nothing is permanent anymore when you really go and look in industry. Even industry is letting people go on a regular basis, right? And sometimes you're just unlucky because, they just let the younger people go and you go out. I think the key is that every job you're going, your strengths, and you are a little bit need to be selfish. You become more of an expert, which is then increasing your value to be hired again, because people at the end, they always look for qualified people.
Thank you.
You always find a job. I was always thinking, in the worst case, I go cleaning. My mom is a Swiss housewife. She told me how to clean a house, so I was really good at that too. So. We're degrading, sorry.
Are there any questions from the audience? Thank you very much for the question. Are there any more questions? Olga?
Okay. Thank you. I'm pretty much experienced, so sorry, but I wanted to ask, you are kind of very good set because you have different these lengths of experience, and this is actually very interesting to look at your perception of life. And now, could you recall, I don't know if it's possible, but could you recall what was the main kind of difference between now with your experience between your expectation what gonna happen and your kind of current position? How different it was. Of course, like Professor Ursula, she has like the toughest task to remember what was the expectation.
I still remember. I came out of a working class family. The goal was to find an apprenticeship and marry and become a housewife, right? That was my destination as I was growing up in Switzerland. I've achieved much more than I ever could anticipate. I initially started off, but I was the explorer, I'm born like this. So that's why, every time I just went and tried to figure out what I'm good at. And I said, I'll try, and as long as I succeed, I keep going, right? And so I succeeded and then went to the next step and next step and next step. And every time I looked, what are my options? What are my options? I looked already in the first year of my studies in Switzerland, how do I get abroad? Because I need to get abroad, How do I do that with no money? And that is actually how I went, and I definitely listened to my feelings because I had no role models, because I didn't see any women. What do I really like? And it feels good in the tummy. I mean, at the end, you make a matrix and rationalize everything in your decision-making, which is good. But at the end, you're going to do the numbers so that it is in agreement with your tummy. So that is how you do your life, because there is always problems on your jobs, because the job is never perfect. There are phases in between when you got a proposal rejected, you have some difficult personal problem. I mean, you have to give up your dream project in industry because there is a change of management. There is always things that happen. Or you start your company and in between it looks like it goes under and everybody tells you there were, at the end it's also the persistence, because in the core it is what you like to do, and then you're willing to go through the tough time because you just keep going, right? But yeah.
I would say for me, what was always happening is that when I was thinking about my next step, I was very much limited in the opportunities that I have seen at that moment. Like when I was entering the new role, I always, actually after it was much better, and I got so much more opportunities that I was thinking before, because I didn't even have the knowledge. Like for example, when I I moved to France. I was doing my PhD there. And at the end of my PhD, I decided that I will go to the space field because France is good at this, so I could do it. I was speaking French. And then my first job was, I was working in the French Space Agency on a Mars rover that was done by NASA, Perseverance. So if you would tell me 20 years old me that one day you will be able to work for Mars rover, I couldn't believe it. It would look like you are completely crazy, you know? There is no way that would be even possible. So I would say that what was happening to me and the opportunities I had was so much more better, more exciting, and so much many more doors were open that I was imagining at the beginning. Nothing to do what, when I was my bachelor, what I will do, completely nothing. Because actually I was thinking I always will work in sales because I know a bit of physics, I'm a woman, so I can speak to someone, and so on. Yeah, I'm in R&D department I have a PhD, completely has nothing to do. So I really especially for nowadays students, actually you can go as far as your fantasy does. Really, this is the only limit. There is nothing for example, now I speak a lot about this NASA rover Perseverance because people invite me to speak about it. They think I'm an expert on Lithuania about this. And these samples from the Mars are gonna come back to Europe in 10 years. So actually the students, or even in high school, that they work now on biology, they can analyze these samples. And if someone really has a goal, I'm 100% sure they can do it. So yeah, that's my point, and that's my experience.
From my side, maybe I didn't have too much expectations before I go to bachelor or master studies or even now. And actually all my decisions somehow went not as I expected. I was mentioning in the beginning that I was already decided to go to industry and to have some kind of work to start at 8 a.m., finish at 5 p.m. and yeah, some of the standard industrial job. But now it's more or less my job is also combined with a hobby, and you're not counting hours anymore. You're not counting weekends anymore. Yeah, so, and it's also combined with some really interesting internships, which I was not considering before going for PhD studies. And yeah, I went also to Berkeley labs to work for a few months. Yeah, now also thinking about the next internships. So yeah, more or less what I could say, I was not expecting where I will go. Yeah, so somehow it's happened that it's quite a good way to go in the research and not to plan in advance.
My situation is the same. I didn't have any expectations. I always liked science. When I was more little, I loved quantum things. But if someone would have asked me what I wanted to do, I had a lot of friends that knew what they wanted to do. I was always unsure. For sure, I was not expecting to be here, for instance, right now. I would have never guessed that. But yeah, I also think that the more, the less expectations you have, or the less predicted you have your life, the more open to new opportunities you are, and you end up in situations that you would never expected, or places. But yeah, it's the same situation that I didn't have expectations, so difficult to compare. But for sure, not expecting this.
Thank you. I don't see any more questions from the audience. Then I would like to move forward to another topic. It's not a secret that if you want to achieve a lot, you have to work a lot for it. Sometimes not 6, 8, 12, or even more hours about it. Yet again, when you finish your work time, workload, you go back home, you have a husband, you have a wife, kids, family, everyday life burden to take care of. Could you share, if you have some kind of a recipe, how to manage both those two things, personal life, outside of the industry, outside of the academia, and at home,
Okay. In my case, I would say a good recipe is to move abroad, where you don't have any of the responsibilities, because right now, I really like, I have 1 hour per day that I like to do sport just to keep my mental health there. But I do spend a lot of hours in the lab. Again, doesn't matter if it's during weeks or weekends or night or day or never mind. I want to like solve the problem I'm trying to solve. So, and I really don't have anything. I mean, if I want to spend the whole day there, I will spend it. So that's an easy solution. But yeah, if you have like other things that you have to do, then might be more difficult. Haven't encountered yet that situation. That's maybe why I will do my PhD abroad. I don't know.
Okay, I don't have children and a husband now, so it's easier for me to to combine those things. But anyway, I think it's quite important not to forget to get rest. Yeah, so you cannot work. Yeah, of course, always you can have a lot of different projects, a lot of students, a lot of what to do, and this workflow is not the ending one. Yeah, so but I'm sure that even if you are successful and somehow you are managing to do those things, but you must also to spend some weekend outside of work and or just take some holidays to go for a week somewhere else, because you're somehow resetting. And after you come back, you are much more productive. And yeah, it's also very important not to forget that you must have free time.
Well, I will speak about this from a woman perspective. So actually, I came back to work half a year ago after 2 years of maternal leave, and I could change department, go to the department where I can work from home. I don't need to work in the lab. So, you know, I was thinking, okay, so if my kid is sick, I will stay at home, I will work with the kids, so it's better for me, it's more flexible job. But I didn't do it. I stayed in R&D, and I'm so happy because now my husband stays at home with my kid. She's sick. And this is really amazing decision I made, because at the end, I just wouldn't work actually those days. So it's really important for a woman, if you want to work and if you want to manage everything, so don't go home, okay? Just stay at work, do your full day at work, and then go home and then take care of the rest. Yeah.
Yes, I didn't know if I want to have kids for a long time, because I really had so much fun. I pretty much lived your life. I had so much fun at work, and I was abroad in the PhD, so, you know, who cares? For me, work was part of the fun. I didn't go for any other hobbies. I still always took vacations, so I did a lot of ski mountaineering, learned windsurfing during my PhD. So I always took also my vacation time, and I actually managed to get married, so I also was going out, dating people. So that was all part of it. But then, when we started our career, moving back to Switzerland, I was 33. I basically knew I wanted to first establish my group and then try for kids. And at that point, you know, I waited until I was 37. I married a younger husband, so good. He also had no urgency and was building up his company. And then at one point we said, okay, let's try it. And, you know, I didn't know if it's going to work, and I could have lived with or without kids, you know. So my sister, for example, she never had kids, and she now likes to be a good aunt. You know, you also can adopt kids and take care of kids, especially as a professor, right? Your students become a little bit your kids. But then it worked. And then, of course, I totally underestimated what it means to have a baby, right? So that was definitely, I honestly thought on the first maternity leave, I'm going to have a mini sabbatical. You know, the kid is sleeping, you know, what's the problem? It, of course, didn't sleep, and I didn't get to sleep, and so I was pretty much zombie-like. And but my husband and I, we clearly said we're going to equally share, and I think that was absolutely crucial. So we, as soon as I stopped nursing, my husband was taking care of the baby as much as me. We always negotiated who gets to work. We delegated everything we could with money. We had dual careers, so, anything, we had a cleaning lady, then we had the shopping done. Our kids went to a daycare. And of course, the first year the kid is always sick, so which is a little bit of a challenge how it's managed. But then my mom was close, so my mom was very happy to be a grandmother finally. And so she then came and helped a lot. So you need to organize things. If you don't have a grandmother, you adopt a grandmother or some other additional help to do it. And I also agree, my husband and I divided up the days. So he was in charge to take the kids in the morning. I'm not a morning person, but I became a morning person. I got up early, went to work, and then picked up the kids from the daycare. And then he worked longer. So during the week, we said we work as much as we can and then try to take the weekend off. And so that forced us to also be more focused. You don't waste your time at work, you work, right? And you have to make a decision from all the possible things that you want to do the ones which is the most productive, right? And actually it's good because it keeps you concentrated not to waste too much time during work time. A lot of people just do a lot of wasting time at work, actually. I was focused. And then my husband and I had the so-called red flag, because sometimes one of us had to work on the weekend because there was a proposal. He had an emergency in the company. And then we raised red flag, and then there was one of us went on the weekend. But you were not allowed to raise your red flag every weekend. So we always negotiated who gets to work. And then we also managed over time, we had then a nanny, because we did not have day school. So we bought a house large enough so that we had a live-in nanny. And then we always had the whole neighborhood at our house because for them it was free babysitting. And I told the nanny, write down which kids are here during the day. And for the nanny, it was not so much more work if she had 2 or 3 or 4 kids. But I knew where the kids were, and then if the nanny on the weekend was gone traveling or she had some time, I knew which parents I could call up and say, hey, could my kids have a sleepover? So my kids had sleepover time in emergency, but they weren't aware it was an emergency. So you definitely manage, the whole situation so that the kids don't even know that they are part of an emergency program. And, kids are social. They like to hang out with other kids. And so you really approach it a little bit like that. And I can say both my kids went into full-time daycare after 10 weeks after birth. And they're now 25 and 27, finished their master's degree at ETH. So if this is the side effect, okay, they became scientists as well. This is a problem we can deal with, right? But there as well, I never felt guilty. I always knew if my husband was in charge, he's in charge. And I actually had to do what my husband always knew when my lecture was, because I go to the lecture. That was the thing. And he did not plan any business trips during that time. And that one morning, the kid came back on the way from kindergarten. He fell over with his scooter because he took it too tight, had the whole face bloody, and I did not know if this guy has to go to the hospital. I left, went to the lecture. My husband was in charge, right? So you're not the only person. That's also, a lot of women feel like they have to be, you share your kids. There is a lot of people that were part of my kids growing up, and it actually makes the kids stronger. You share your kids. They're not just yours. They also go and hug the father. And, that is actually, for the women, sometimes harder, that they actually share their kids. But for the kids, it's great. You don't have to feel guilty. That is my advice to the women. Don't feel guilty. I never called my kids during the time I was on a conference. My husband was there, right?
Wow.
That's my advice, right? You can manage it, totally.
Thank you for your answers and for the given advice. No questions from the audience. Very simple question. Simona is working in the private sector. Ursula and Lina is working in the academia, and Eulalia is also doing her studies in the last master's semester. So, very simple question: could you describe your everyday? Could you describe your everyday at the work? You get up, you have your first day coffee, and what do you do then?
We have a long coffee in light conversion. Yeah, so actually my work day looks like I'm working on a laser system that is used for eye surgery. So my work day is literally to try to solve the problems of the system that are existing. And usually I work with people from different departments, like for example, sometimes electronical department or mechanics department. So we have to understand what is the problem. We need to find what is the source of it. So sometimes I'm doing the measurements in the lab. So I work always in the lab, like hands-on an instrument. I do whatever it takes to prepare the measurement, screwdrivers, changing the cables and so on, performing the measurement, analyzing the data, like you need to sometimes learn the programming language to analyze the data and so on. And then we find the problem. So this problem is being solved, goes to the production department, and then, tada, we have a better instrument. So more or less, this is how it works. The only problem that it takes more than one day.
Okay.
Yeah.
Good question. Actually, it's, when I'm here in Lithuania at lab, maybe during PhD work, so yeah, you have a lot of experimental or theoretical work, like making everything with your hands, being all the time fully involved in lab activities. But now, at the moment, when I'm also the head of optical coatings laboratory, actually, my workday looks more than are you sitting in front of your computer or you are talking with someone. So more or less, yeah, my students are doing a lot of experimental work in lab. We have discussions, or if there are some issues, we are going together and solving them or trying to solve. But yeah, not so much what I have to do with my own hands, at least during this period. But yeah, more or less, more than half of the time for me takes to write the proposals for projects, to write articles. Yes, more or less. Half of the time you have to give to this, not administrational stuff, but to writing proposals and thinking new ideas, what you can promote in the proposal, and how to find new collaborators, new partners, like to attract new companies who would be interested in what you are doing. So yeah, there are a lot of communication at this stage.
So in my case, well, it will probably be most of the case of students doing the thesis, because I don't have lectures anymore. So I always wake up early in the morning, I have my breakfast, and then I go. Right now I'm working both on experimental, and I managed to get into more trouble and work also on numerical simulations. So I'm struggling with both things. When I get tired of trying to solve one problem, I switch to the other one. And actually, well, right now I'm struggling a lot with some experimental part, but we have that setup shared between some people. So I kind of adapt my day to the schedule of that one, and try to do other tasks. But I'm just focusing on my research for my thesis, so it's pretty easy to go.
So I want to divide up this question, the different phases as you move through your professor career. Initially, when you build up your lab, you're gonna be also in the lab because you have to train your PhD student and build up a culture. And then you're really gonna be there with your people so that they learn your way of working. And I was before 4 years at Bell Labs, where I had my own lab, and I did all the work alone as one person doing all the experiments alone. And so I was definitely very strong in the lab, and I really liked lab work, and I made sure that my students learned it my way. I didn't delegate that at this early stage to a postdoc who came wherever. I wanted to get my culture, my way of operation to my graduate students. Once you have your first graduate students trained, you then always team up the next graduate students with your senior graduate students so that you keep your culture going. So in a more advanced level, you're out of the lab, which is a little bit shocking at the beginning because that's where you're good at and you don't afterwards know all the details, but you become a multiplier because you can also do more, right? Because you still know what it takes to do an experiment. You can be still troubleshooting with the students, but you're also having the possibility to do more problems. You suddenly can do not only what you can do with your own hands, you can do much more. And you can be, I always had some project where I knew exactly where we are going, the proposal was written, the students had it, but I always used a certain fraction on exploratory efforts to figure out, could there be something where we have the unique combination of where I'm really good at with something else and create something better. So I started at one point with SNOME, ultrafast SNOME, then I discovered, that doesn't really work out. After a postdoc and a PhD student, I stopped. Then I started with other things. So I always had a little bit of an exploratory part with maybe one PhD student or only a postdoc. And also I always told my PhD student, there is space for exploration. If you think you can do something better than what is written in the proposal, let me know. And some PhD students, if you're a multiplier, you don't always have all the ideas. You create an environment where everybody is inspirational and also creates ideas. I had a whole, one PhD student work, he totally redesigned his PhD thesis because something unexpected happened in the lab. We then started to figure out what is going on and a whole new research direction came out. So that is actually exploration, and I wanted to get this culture into my group, Go and always explore a little bit, And I always said, ask for forgiveness, then permission, right? That was my philosophy, right? It's easier to ask for forgiveness if you didn't do something the professor told you, if you actually bring something better. So that's also, so I try to always raise my PhD students also into independence a little bit. And, to thinking and exploring so that they could at the end decide if they like it, So it, of course, moves as it goes, but as long as it's an interesting question, sometimes you are more in the lab at the beginning, then you become less in the lab. Now I'm in my retirement phase, and I'm just going from one conference to the next, and I always liked traveling, so it's also fun.
Great. At the beginning of the Q&A, I mentioned that there's a trend. I'm not sure if that's happening quite often in Lithuania, but people actually do tend to, after a few years or after a few decades, to come back to the academia. Although they're running a perfectly balanced family business, they are the CEOs of huge companies. So why is that a case that people tend to come back sometimes from the private sector to academia? Are they missing something?
I don't know. I mean, to be honest, haven't seen too many examples at ETH, and I think, the fun thing about academia is that you always work with young people, And that's basically the fun thing, right? And you can be in this exploration mode together with young people. And that, I mean, that's something that I think a lot of people are attracted to. If they then find the money, they might actually finance it on their own, right? Yeah,
Well, I think the idea of the business that it should create money, and what you do, what you sell, what you create, what you develop, the new technologies, they should be aligned with the business goals. So if it doesn't, and you want to learn something, you want to learn something new, some new field, so actually you can go to the lab. And we do have colleagues that are doing exactly that. So they work part-time in light conversion, part-time in a university. And you never know, maybe the topic that they learn in the lab on their PhDs, for example, they are going to explore in the company. And then this is their going to be main topic. So I would say what I have seen is that people go from industry part-time or fully to the academia because of the freedom of the topics that they choose, because of the time that they can spend on something that you don't do it in the industry. In the industry, you spend time on something that you're gonna measure with cash at the end of the day. So you don't have this problem in the academia. You can spend time on something that you just enjoy like that.
Maybe I could comment that it's not going only to this way. Not only people from industry are going partly to work in universities, but also people from universities are partly going to work in industry, but not leaving their own work position in university or research center. So from my experience and from my colleague experience, I think that people are choosing this way because, for example, you are working in applied research and you have some kind of idea and you create some prototype or new technology or something like that, which is really attractive for one of the companies. And it's, I think, quite good way to work in this way if you are like collaborating with that company and you are helping them to accept that technology to their industrial processes. So
this is actually true because I totally forgot, because in many academias you have a work contract where you can do 1 day a week consulting, and of course if you work in something more applied, a lot of the professors are then doing consulting in companies. There is even professors that take a leave of absence to start a company. And, normally it's given for 2 years, normally not too long because otherwise your group is falling apart. So they expect you to come back. But sometimes, people really give up tenured professor position because they go into their own startup, right? So, yeah.
Okay. Just maybe a very short follow-up question. Lina mentioned that some people even tend to, be at these 2 seats at the same time, working in private sector and in academia. Is it possible to do so in your cases, in your country,
I
in Lithuania?
hear a lot that, for example, computer science are very often joint appointment because, in many places at the computer science, the forefront is now in industry and not anymore at the university. But they still like the flexibility of both. So universities are a little bit iffy. Not all universities allow that. So that depends.
Okay. No questions from the audience. Okay. We mentioned and we talked about stereotypes. Working in university, it's not so secured as working in the industry. Working in industry, you will be only tightening screws and that's all. So we are living in either in the social bubble or in the stereotype bubble when making choices. Why are we driven by so many stereotypes, and are they actually giving that much of a force on making the decision among young people today?
I think if you think you go to industry and having a secure position, you're dreaming, I think when you look at the American culture, which is kind of spreading, every year they let 10% of their engineers go. Look at, you know, Novartis, they look at Tesla, you know, and then they shed out, you know, they started doing that in banks. I think, you know, there is no job security. I think you should never be guided by fear. That's why you also go dual career when you have kids. You know, if you're out of a job for a while, at least somebody is still there, because most likely it's not happening at both at the same time. And if you know something, you always find a job again. Maybe it's not the perfect job right away, but, you know, there's so many people, everybody's looking for excellent people. And if you have a technical field, you know about computer and whatever, you always find a job again. People looking like crazy for teachers, right? Can always become a teacher for a while. If you know math.
So I think you do have a lot of stereotypes, especially about the boring work in the companies, that in some cases it might be true, because if you work in a company, especially in the products that are like repetitive, so you might end up doing the same things. But then in the company you can always change. You can always change the department, you can become the lead, so you can and you can also work for optimizing the processes. Like when I have entered the light conversion, we had a kind of new laser system for the eye surgery that it was at the beginning of the production. And when I came back after my parental leave, what I have seen them doing, for example, even if it's repetitive, you do the same system, like you do 100 systems a year, but the way they grew and how they improve in optimizing the processes, effectiveness, like it's really crazy, it's mind-blowing, and it really requires a lot of creativity. So actually the work in the company, it can be also as interesting, and you might need to solve problems, not sometimes scientific problems, but the problems of optimization, for example, how to avoid a human mistake and so on, this kind of stuff. But when you solve these problems, actually it brings a lot of value to the company. So it changed a lot, this kind of decisions and this kind of problems that you solve. So you really see a lot of satisfaction of the work that you have done.
Actually, I thought that it's vice versa. It's more secure to work in university or in state institution if you manage to get that permanent position. So it's, I think it's more secure than to work in private company. Yeah, it's less risky. Yeah, so it's my opinion. But yeah, those myths, maybe it depends on the company, and maybe not all companies, high-tech companies, has such strong R&D departments as like conversion. I'm not sure. Yeah, we should ask and more companies how they are doing R&D work in their facilities. Yeah, so, but I believe that it's also a myth. You can have interesting jobs in both in industry and in scientific role. Yeah, and also you have, I think, divided into things. One, like academia, you can choose also to read more lectures and to work more with like lecture stuff. And also you can work as a researcher and to do like pure science without reading lectures, but work as well with bachelor, master students or PhD students. Yeah, so it's also not only one way to go to academia.
So I don't have, as said, many experience in any of those two, but I think that a lot of stereotypes maybe, like, of course, had some reason to appear, but also a lot of things are changing the way that companies work now, or even like academia works changes. So maybe right now to take the decision, you can also not rely all the time in those stereotypes. Also, it depends a lot of the company, on the position you work on, and regarding the like boring stuff that you do a lot of repetitive things, I think this also can happen also in academia. Sometimes you need to repeat the same measurement. I don't know, I've seen people repeating the same thing 1,000 times because you need to be sure, or you need to repeat it for other things. So I don't know, I think there's a lot of, yeah, it can happen in both sides.
No questions from the audience. I would like to ask about the... Okay, yeah.
Thank you, actually, very much. I'm pretty much enjoying. Didn't expect enjoyable evening today, so to work. But I mean, now you are very nicely kind of very positive about anything, whatever question, everything ends up good. So could you now give an example of something which ended up badly? I mean, just what decision you kind of regret not in your like personal life, but in this scientific, except for Eulalia. So let's leave her like still happy. I mean, did you make this? What choice was kind of bad?
Actually, maybe I can tell the story because my husband started a company, and then during the telecom bubble, he started a second company. Okay, that actually killed the third kid for us because with two companies, I said, you're not going to be an equal partner on the third kid. And then we decided, okay, let's forget about the third kid. I really wanted to have a girl and I never had a girl. So anyway, but then the second company was not successful. And it was during the telecom bubble, and he hired actually a good friend, also an American in Switzerland, where and he gave this guy he considered a friend, an American, married a Swiss as well, but more on the business side. He gave him all the power because my husband is not a power person. He is, so he was then the CTO of this new company, and his friend became the CEO and board of director, which you should never do. Give never to your friends too much power, even if you get along with each other. And then, of course, the telecom bubble went, and so the company grew to 45 people within very short time, venture capital money, and then the telecom bubble bursted, right? And then, of course, the investors pulled out, right? They had a short time window where everybody pulled out, and so they pulled out of companies, even if you had the technical achievement, and so they pulled out of our company as well. And then his friend became the enemy and decided it was cheaper to get rid of Kurt and me and take over our students that he can control. And so suddenly my husband got fired from one day to the next out of the company that he, created. And suddenly I had a husband. We just bought a house, which we barely could afford. And my husband lost the job. One day I came home and I saw my husband painting the house. Luckily he didn't start to drink. And then we hired lawyers because these Americans made a mistake because in Switzerland you cannot fire somebody instantly without paying, and doing all these social things because you actually have to do something really bad like killing somebody to justify. So that was mistake number 2. Then we had some other lawyers because they started then to attack the original company. At the end, we succeeded. It was a very hard time in between. We thought we're going to lose everything, including the first company. And we hired 3 lawyers. And, each lawyer makes, some incredible amount of money. And, during that time, I thought we're going to start all over again, right? But there, once again, we teamed up, and we started to defend. And we survived. At the end, we bought the company, integrated the whole thing into the original company, and then went on. And the product that we had in that company then ended up being in another startup company and then in another startup company because the technical things, we achieved all the goals, but nobody was interested anymore at the end of the telecom bubble bursting in these achievements, right? So yeah, that was a tough time, but I would say, we were together and we were fighting it together at the end, and then it worked out. But if it wouldn't have worked out, we just would have started again. I mean, my husband would have started something else again, right? Because we're dual career. I still have my job at the university at the end of it.
Well, it was really difficult, but I think I know. I will not mention specific things. I know too many people in this room, but there is one point. But I think at some point in my career, I was stuck for too long in one place because of lack of fantasy and because of lack of idea that I can do something more interesting, because of lack of interest, like finding what authors are doing, what are author opportunities. So I think there was really a time when I could have learned more if I would go to other place like faster. Like I was going too long with the flow, not like looking maybe to change something, but not that you don't have to always like have idea that, okay, you go to speak with someone, you send your CV, or you go to see what company is doing or other lab is doing in order to change. You just gather the information. So I was missing that point of gathering the information on something that I could do something else. So I didn't even know that opportunities existed. I was thinking, oh, this is really like good enough what I'm doing, but it could be much better. At the end of the day, of course, everything turned out fine. But yeah, that's like missing a few years. Maybe I could find, like Ursula said, you go with the best skiers. Maybe I could find better skiers. So.
I have to be honest, but sorry, I couldn't find anything yeah, maybe there was some decisions which I was considering and not sure. Should I go for PhD? Should I go to work with one group? Should I offer some research topics in the lab or something like that? But I'm glad that I took that risk, and yeah, at the moment I couldn't say anything about that, what went wrong.
Okay, thank you. I have one very philosophical question. Maybe Ursula could answer it based on her experience. In academic pathway, what is considered to be a successful career? I remember during our preparational meeting, you said that a lot of young people, when they finish their PhDs, they believe that that's a success, that's a great achievement. But although it does not prove that you are actually successful in scientific world, you're just making first 2 steps, and then you have to go for postdoc for another one, which may show you that you're not eligible to actually survive in a scientific world. And at some point, it seems that the scientific pathway is quite harsh. So what is then considered to be a success?
I mean, in an academic career, at the end, you need publications. You need to have a story. For example, for an ERC starting grant, you need to write a proposal, what you're going to do. Why should anybody give you 1.5 million or 2 million to do what you want to do? So if you don't have any ideas what you want to do and why you are the right person to get this 2 million, then you don't deserve to be a professor, sorry, right? The same thing, if you cannot come up with a good idea how to start a company, then go not and start a company, because with a company you need to make money, right? That was clearly, the company success is clear. You want to sell your product and you need customers, and if you don't have happy customers, your company will not survive. In academia, you need to have your publication, you have to have your unique way of what you want to do, and if you don't have an idea to do that, and sometimes you might be really totally smart and everything, but the time is not right. The field is not right. There is no breakthrough. It's the same with a company. People tell you what was the most important thing that made the company successful is the timing and the right time with the right technology, and then persistence. And that's the same thing with the professor, persistence. If your proposal gets rejected, you go again if you're convinced, right? So I think it's, look at the CVs of successful people. I've learned, because I didn't come from an academic parents or something like this, I just went around and looked. I asked, why is this person successful? And then I went and asked the question. People love to talk about themselves, right? Just ask them, why did you do that? How did you choose that? And you can ask industry people and so on. They talk the whole time, you know, when you ask questions. Look at me. We always talk.
Okay, and quite a follow-up question to your answers. We all know that success lasts quite short, for 1 minute, 1 hour, and so on. We receive a letter with our application that we are accepted, and so on and so on. But before that, the preparational work lasts for 1-2 years. So the main question is how to remain motivated, because there will be ups and downs.
Oh, I have a very good answer to that. If I compare it with climbing up on the mountain. If you only enjoy the short moment you're standing on top of the mountain, your life will be miserable. But you have to enjoy the path up to the top. So if you don't like the past, this exploratory phase of where you don't know, oh my God, you know, if I do this experiment or the experiment doesn't work, you go into troubleshooting. I like troubleshooting. I think it's like a puzzle. But if you don't like troubleshooting, you know, I mean, your life is pretty miserable, right? You know, because most of the time it doesn't work, right? And so you do troubleshooting. So really, the path to your final goal needs to be fun too. If you cannot get any fun out of it, your life is miserable.
Well, actually, I couldn't agree more. So even the way I was choosing the studies, physics, I had no clue. I didn't know any physicist. I had no idea what I would be doing. Actually, people were telling me I will be a teacher. But I just like to study physics. So I still like to study physics, and I do it every day. And I think this is the reason why I can keep going and wake up every morning.
I think that's quite important not to lose your goal. And also, if you reach one goal, for example, for some people can be to defend their PhD thesis, one goal. And after that, you, I don't know, have to think of new goals. And if you will stay in science just to do science, and you will don't have the idea where you want to go with it, so it can be quite hard to stay motivated. But if you have follow-ups those goals, for example, I want to do a postdoctoral research somewhere. It's the other goal. I want to, I don't know, to make some new prototype and to sell it to some company or something like that. So I think those goals and those target things, what you want to reach, they are the main motivation why you should continue what you are doing.
I don't really have anything else to add.
As we're running out of time, are there any last questions from the audience? Okay, you can throw the cube. Okay.
As a woman, have you faced any challenges? Maybe make extra steps or something like this? Maybe to prove something.
And that wasn't the last
So,
question.
you know, as much as I talked about all the good stuff and so on, but I had also moments in life, you know, where I, as a woman, you know, and I actually finishing up my whole career pretty angry, I have to say. But I'm not frustrated, there's a difference, because frustrated means you're just giving up. No. So I definitely pushed the envelope because I grew up in a totally male-dominated environment. I never, ever saw a woman as a role model for the longest time. And I was convinced, because growing up in the 60s and 70s, this is the hippie time, everything is possible. I thought discrimination is not a topic that I ever gonna experience. I just need to show my performance and then I will be equally accepted. Not true. So I then, over time, learned, okay, especially when I got pregnant, that my promotion was not done from extraordinary to ordinary. My professor colleagues told me, how do you think you can be a professor and having kids? And there was a big mess. I can give a long story about that one. But then for me, really important is that I saw then finally some other women. That was the MIT report 1999, where the women got organized at MIT and the president of MIT admitted to the world that they are discriminating against women. And then I kind of thinking, these women say the same thing as me. I'm not alone, and this is not me. I'm not, people were always saying, oh, you're not nice enough, you're not that enough, and so you're never perfect as a woman because you are different, you look differently, you behave differently. So for some people, I mean, every person has another golden path for the woman to behave, right? So anyway, so I then felt like, oh, it's not me. I gonna continue, and I was independent, and that is really when I really enjoyed that I was independent. I was my own boss, and I really started to cherish this. And then I just kept going, and I didn't listen to all these guys who told me you cannot do that, and you're not nice enough, and whatever. I just ignore all these people because of this MIT report. And then 10 years later, after I had kids, I organized the women in Switzerland, and I thought I can do the same thing as the MIT women. And then I realized that the guys did not want to change things. And at this point, as you move through your career, maybe at the beginning, the women tend to be encouraged, hopefully, if they haven't been working with the wrong people. But generally, I would say the younger women are getting encouraged to keep going. Then there is some support for daycare. It's slowly but surely accepted, and that there are the daycare places. And then as they are moving up in the career ladder, things are changing. And it has a lot to do that you're working in a man's world. There is competition for this leadership position. And the people are willing to play dirty. If they can take you out as a competition by just being a little bit sexual harassing you along the way, and you're out, more chances for them to get the position. So you have to look at it a little bit like as a hardcore competition for the position. It gets narrower and narrower, and people are willing to play dirty. And the women underestimate what it takes to do networking. That's definitely something. And a badly run company is run by informal power groups where women are excluded. And that is a place, as a woman, you have to leave, because that's a toxic workplace. So we're seeing actually more and more women are coming out because they have been stopped in their promotion, that you're also aware of the culture in the company. And the companies need to slowly but surely realize that they're losing you as an excellent person if the culture is not changing. So we are actually now coming out more and more with stories, what is going wrong, also in academia, and pushing for better governance. So this is my contribution then for the next generation. I'm starting more and more becoming involved in trying to improve the culture for the women to support inclusive excellence. Okay, and I tell the women nowadays, be aware of a toxic work environment, start networking. Actually, in a good company, they should support the women to network, have scientific lunches to get to know each other so that you can exchange. How are you doing it? How are you going with this situation? As long as we are below 30%, it is a more difficult environment. Don't take it personally. And avoid stupid people and avoid stupid companies and change, honestly. Yeah, I mean, I could talk about this one for a long time too. So, yeah.
If you'd like to add up.
Oh my, I have a lot to say.
Now we need alcohol.
Not even, actually. So since the beginning, I felt like I'm different and I shouldn't do what I'm doing, like physics. Since I started to study, I heard a lot of comments like, what you, girl, are doing in the Faculty of Physics and so on. And it kept going. Like when I was in some country, I had a colleague who was saying a lot of jokes about women. The phrase started, why women always? And then something completely stereotypical. And sometimes I hear the comments, do you connected the fiber like a woman and so on. And when you hear it 4 times a day, it's a bit too much. But what was shocking for me is that I was always open feminist. So I was speaking about this behavior to my bosses and the bosses of my bosses. And the boss of my boss, who I really consider as a really smart guy, he didn't say a word after I said what I say just now. He moved of my office backwards, literally. Like nothing was done. You know, if I would go to my work, for example, and I would have a colleague of different skin color, and I would say, oh, you know, I don't know, this color person, why you are always so stupid and so on. That would really blow everyone completely. I would, I think, lose a job. But when you say the same phrase about a woman, it's a joke. So when you say that phrase and you change woman to a black person, for example, and it doesn't sound funny, so it's not a joke, okay? So that's my message. And I hear this kind of comments, or I have seen a very clear discrimination. Like, for example, half of my jobs interview, I was asked if I have a family. My husband never had this question. So at some point, I say to myself now, if a company asks me this question, I'm not going through the process anymore. Like, I'm done with this interview, this is forever. But anyhow, I was even asked before the interview a question, if I will be able to do this role as a woman, that actually the role I was overqualified for. And I have a written question, so I still have this email, I think, so that's really shocking. Well, I'm saying this because some people, especially guys, they're not aware that this is happening still in 2024. It's still everyday life. And like women, I mean, we are in a really like man environment here in physics, and there are a lot of different manifestations of that. Like in R&D department, we are 80 people, we are 4 women. That is really shocking. And I mean, when you are in this kind of environment, you do feel different. So there is like a discrimination that comes from, you know, from other people, but also we feel different. Like I had to accept that I'm not like the authors, like I'm different. I'm not one of them actually, but I had to find a way to work being not one of them. So yeah, so that's my point. I could speak a lot about this, yeah, seriously, but I really think what was for me really important, and I was always doing this, I knew that what I say, the things I say here, I was always saying since I was really young. I was like, I think I was born feminist, and you know, people really like reacting shockingly, and being feminist is like something, you know, negative. You hate guys, that's by default, and I'm not afraid of that negative reaction from people to what I say. I always say it, and I will keep doing that because it's important to speak. I know that I'm not gonna convert everyone, you know, to be feminist. Actually, to be feminist is just to be normal, you know, which should be the case. But I wanna that, you know, that would be the topic that some people would think. And I really feel like some guys, some colleagues, maybe sometimes they make fun of me, you know. But I still believe they sometimes do think about what they say, or they do, like they become at least a bit aware that this is still a problem, and you know, it's not a problem for them, it's a problem for us actually. So yeah, so I will keep doing. And the other thing that I really enjoy doing is that going to schools. I'm invited sometimes to school, and you know, I'm not being paid for that. I need to take my time off my work. But I do it because I'm a woman and I'm obliged to. Actually, I feel like I have to go to the school and I have to show the girls. And I'm not the best physicist in the world, no, we have it. But even, you know, they believe so. I'm extremely smart and so on, so this is good. Like if they think that they might become, you know, a physicist, mathematician or someone, that woman is not really, you know, a lot in this field. So I'm really glad, and I think all of us as a woman in this field should have impact like that. It's a small thing. If you, you know, convert one girl going to physics, that's good enough.
Maybe just by saving time, I would say that in Lithuania, it's things not so bad, like in totally, it's getting better. And if you follow the tip, which Ursula just said, that talk with people and avoid stupid people and stupid companies, you can avoid the issues with because you are a woman. Yeah, I was quite maybe happy which way I choose, and I haven't too much issues. Yeah, you have to be competitive, and it doesn't matter you are a woman or man. For sure, you must be competitive. But yeah, you have to be careful with your decisions.
Eulalia?
I don't know, I grew up kind of in a bubble, but really like with my family, we were the place where I studied everywhere. I never felt this difference. Like in my situation, I'm aware that this is what happens, and it's most of the cases, I mean, when you see the numbers in the companies or everywhere. But I never felt this difference, and it's something that is still shocking me when I hear it, when I see it, and everything, because I grew up with not having, like, I'm different than a boy, like, we I don't know, like, you can judge us for what we know, for how we do things and everything, not because I'm a girl or a boy. So that's like the mindset I grew up with. But I do think that the world doesn't work that way still. Yeah.
I'm really glad to hear that, because it's actually something that we see. Most parents raise their kids very equally nowadays. You know, they really want to encourage the girls as much as the guys. And so it's very typical at a younger stage in your career. You actually feel like you have the equal chance. I actually believed it even at my time. But one time you will realize as you move up in the career that it changes. And the important thing, what I tell the women is, don't stay alone. Get to know other women. Start, if there is not a formal network, start an informal network. You know, have a little bit of wine, because sometimes you also need to laugh about it and joke about it. To the guys, I have 2 sons, right? I'm saying, let me just ask one question. How many of the women have heard when they had an achievement, like winning an award, good grades, that they got it because they were a woman? Oh, not so many, huh? I mean, by the way, it never stops, even when it's still said today to me. And this is something, guys, which is not true, because we do a good job of selecting the qualified people. And no man who wins an award has good grades has to hear that because you're a man, even though this is more likely to happen than the other way around, right? And just don't even say it. If you think it, but I don't want to hear it anymore. That already changes the culture if you don't say it anymore. How many men think that there is reverse discrimination, that they think there is a lower chance for them to go for an academic career? Nobody thinks that? Because that's what I hear a lot. They don't dare to raise their hands with me being here, otherwise I'm going to shoot them. But you know, I mean, look at the statistics. We really don't have that many. And I really think there is, I agree. If you think it's just a finite pie, and with more women coming in, there is more competition, there's less chance. Yes, for those people who don't bring the performance, but at the end, if I go to the doctor, I want to have a good doctor operating on me. I want to cross a road and a bridge that is holding, and not because we only hire men and we're forgetting all the excellent women who have, which would increase the quality of the bridges, right? So at the end, we want to do the quality, and we want to be people, and you are the next generation, guys. You need to do it better. And if you think dual career, it's also a liberation for you, because you can be stuck in having the responsibility for the income of a family, and you don't like the job where you are, but you have to stay in the job because you're the only person who earns the money. That's pretty miserable too, right? So my husband definitely really enjoyed that he had a working wife. And sometimes, you know, he also had to pay something. And I raised my boys, hopefully in a decent way, and they will also go along. I think it's much nicer if we just have excellence criteria independent of gender. But I think you all have to be aware that you have a bias. Women have a bias against women leaders. And so just be aware of it.
Just to end up...
So, but you know, if you get me on this topic, if you get me going on this topic, we can have some wine and I keep going for the next 3 hours, you know.
Just to end up this discussion in a very classical question, based on your experience and advice, could you form a one-sentence advice to the younger generation? What would your message be in one sentence?
One sentence. You guys start because I'm not me.
It could be a long sentence.
Use your fantasy.
Yeah. My recommendation would be, if you have any idea what you want to try, don't be afraid and just go to try a company, try scientific work, try anything what you want to do, and don't be afraid of failure. Yeah, because what can happen if you will fail? Nothing. Nothing. You will go try another way. That's all.
Am I allowed to skip that one?
Actually, I now remember what I can say is find something that gets you excited and you are willing to work for.
I would like to thank you for listening. I would like to thank the participants, Professor Ursula Keller, Simona, Lina, Eulalia, for participating. I know it were 2 hours of a discussion, but I hope that you liked it and enjoyed it. The first day of open reading is ending, but it's not the end. It will be continuing tomorrow. So thank you very much for listening. Thank you very much for sharing your experiences, and hope you enjoyed.